Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So we're going to continue on with our ultimate Group 1 car reviews in hopes that we can finally get a full ranking for every single Group 1 car within GT7. Today's video we're going to move back to something more modern, so an LMP1 machine. Moving on from the Toyota TS050, we're going to move into its successor after the TS040 and obviously the 30, the TS050. This car finally gave Toyota its first ever Le Mans victory. Now, in terms of the car itself, to begin reviewing this, we need to head over to the first part of the review, which is obviously the price point. The TS050 costs the exact same as the TS030. However, this time around, we have a lot more performance points to play with. 879.83. As you can see, this one is now only 2,400 cc's. It's gone from naturally aspirated to turbocharged, weighing 875 kilograms, 493 brake horsepower, four-wheel drive, and obviously has that ridiculous hybrid system. Now, this was our original fastest vehicle in terms of the Group 1 cars that I reviewed. Obviously, for this kind of Group 1 category review, I'm obviously going to have to re-review it. But before we get into the review of the car itself inside of GT7, let's give you a rundown on the history of the TS050. So this is the successor of the TS040, which obviously succeeded the TS030, which we reviewed a few days prior. In terms of its overall racing statistics, it took part in 34 races, took 19 wins, 46 podiums, 16 poles, and 15 fastest laps. It took away the Constructors' title in 2018 and 19, and 2019 and 2020. So it took 2 Constructors titles and 2 Drivers titles, both within the same year. Now, a lot of people will probably turn around and say the TS050 doesn't deserve the reputation it has. You know, it is a Le Mans winner for 3 years on the trot, winning both 18, 19 and 2020 before the big regulation changes in 2021, in which Toyota continued on with the Gr.1 hypercar. So in terms of its statistics, it went relatively uncompeted against for mainly those 3 years. Obviously, it did manage to take the win, but with Toyota, it wasn't always a guarantee, which we'll talk about when it comes to the 2016 24 Hour of Le Mans in a few moments' time. So again, whilst it didn't really have much competition in those years, and it did manage to give Toyota its first win, at the end of the day, a little bit like with the whole Red Bull 2023 F1 situation, you can only really beat what's on the grid and what's put in front of you on the day. Look, if teams aren't taking part in the championship, or the teams that are taking part aren't willing to compete with you or keep up with you, again, that's on them. You can only do what you can do, and at the end of the day, for a race like 24 Hour Le Mans, you have to be able to finish to be able to win it in the first place. And that's going to move me on to this model year. So this is the 2016 model there. So obviously it did have a few upgrades and such over the years, performance ballasts and stuff like that obviously did get applied to the car. So we're looking at the 2016 model. So how did this one perform for that said season? So let's talk about its 2016 season, since that is the car we are specifically seeing in game. So whilst in, I think, a lot of people's opinion, this car was always going to be behind the likes of Audi and Porsche, since it finished 3rd place in terms of the overall standings, its main highlight was obviously the 24 Hour of Le Mans, where this car was pretty much leading the way. It was basically guaranteed to win until obviously typical Toyota curse ensued, and the car essentially broke down with 1 lap to go, meaning that its 1 minute 14 gap that it had to the Porsche, or number 2 Porsche, that was sat in 2nd place, faded away, and the car basically failed to finish in the end, breaking down on what was the final racing lap of the race, and obviously allowed Porsche to go on to famously take that win in 2016, as Toyota hearts were broken once again. It always felt like Toyota were obviously destined to win Le Mans at some point, but they always felt like they could just never really get there, and that carried on with this vehicle obviously all the way up until 2018, 2019 and 2020. So eventually this car did end up coming good and winning, obviously under completely different different circumstances, considering the likes of Audi and obviously Porsche after 2017 did end up dropping out, and only really left Toyota with relatively uncompetitive competition. However, like I said, when it comes to Le Mans, you have to be in it to win it, and you can only beat what's there in front of you on the day. And obviously with Toyota's luck, who knows, they probably would have not finished on any other year anyway. So at the end of the day, it is still an achievement, and this car did achieve a lot of success during its time. So let's move on to how this car performs in GT7, the main point of these reviews. Obviously, its closest reference that we have is the TS050, which we reviewed prior to this vehicle. Obviously, a completely different spec of car. That one is obviously naturally aspirated hybrid. This one is obviously turbocharged. In terms of the vehicle itself, though, it definitely feels a lot different compared to the TS050. I'd actually go on to say it feels a lot more weightier and a lot more skittish, and overall much harder to drive. I would say that was the first thing I noticed, is just keeping this thing on the road and keeping it with on the black stuff. If you don't keep it on the tarmac, then to be honest, it isn't necessarily going to be your fault. This car really does feel like a handful when you first drive it, where the TS030 felt like a very good beginner's car. If you want to try and get someone into these sort of Group 1 more modern machines, then that perhaps is the perfect starting point, where the TS050 will sort of kind of throw you in the barrier and try and make you spit your teeth out. But overall, it is still a fantastic performing car. The step up in performance from that TS030 to the TS050 is massively recognizable. This is a fantastic machine through and through. Obviously, prior to this review, it was the fastest Group 1 car that we'd ever reviewed in GT7, obviously topping that Group 1 leaderboard by a sizable margin, especially compared to everything else. Now, obviously, this will have competition with the likes of the Porsche and obviously Audi as well. So it will be interesting to see how it does compete against those pair when obviously we get around to reviewing them. But to be honest, the step up in performance, seeing it from the TS030 to this TS050, is absolutely insane. There is a reason these cars are so well renowned. They are so well loved. And to be honest, the LMP1 machines, I will never ever forget them. So the TS050 hybrid from 2016 comes in obviously top once again with its new time of a 5 minutes 48.9, around about a second off of the 47 that it originally set around about 6 to 7 months ago. So again, still relatively on that level, and much faster than the Gr.10 hybrid, which we haven't re-reviewed yet. That will be next up in terms of the Toyota vehicles. And in terms of things like the GTR LM, it completely smashes it out of the water. There's around about a 12-second gap there. As you can see, even the Group C machines struggle to get anywhere close to the likes of the Toyota TS050. So this is the new benchmark that has been set. It'll be interesting to see if the likes of the Porsche and Audi can come along and absolutely smash the TS050 off of that Group 1 top spot, which is held for around about 6 to 7 months at this point. Whilst I do feel a lot of other people would choose the Audi and Porsche over this car, I would certainly say give this a try. For me, it's a visually striking car. It performs very well, and overall, it's just an absolute joy to drive. Let me know what you think of the TS050 down below. I know a lot of people will kind of go towards the Gr.10 because it's much more modern, and I feel like the TS050 doesn't necessarily get the respect it deserves. So do you think it deserves, kind of the success that it had, or do you think the fact that Toyota went relatively uncompeted against for those years, that really those Le Mans wins don't necessarily count? Let me know down below. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Take care, guys. Peace.